Today is March 1st. It's the 60th day of the year, and this is the On This Day podcast. Quick programming note, I promise you there will be new content coming soon. What was going to be a week or two of reprise episodes has turned into an entire month of reprise episodes, because life intervenes. I love doing this show, and I love that you love listening to it. And don't get me wrong, doing a whole year of daily episodes has been a thoroughly enjoyable experience for me, but it's also been a bit time-consuming. I've been thinking about how best to keep this going with all the other time commitments I have, and I've also been thinking about what my favorite episodes have been to create, to listen to, what episodes have gotten the most passionate feedback from all of you. And those have been the longer, deeper dives on one particular topic. Episodes like Marie Antoinette and Monsieur de Paris, Lizzie Borden, Leonard Skinnard, Roy Benavides, and Jonestown. So with all that in mind, I've decided that for the foreseeable future, the show will no longer be a daily show. Instead, I plan to crank out a couple episodes a week that are 12 to 15 minutes in length each and focused on one story, like the death of Tchaikovsky, or the Unabomber, or Pan Am 103 in Lockerbie. Those are just examples that come to mind. The episodes won't always be dark and tragic, but some will. I'm drawn to mystery. And the one thing that will not change about this show is that I will still and always only select topics that float my boat. Kind of like Truman Capote described his book In Cold Blood as a non-fiction novel, I'm approaching these new episodes as non-fiction audio novellas, if that doesn't sound too pompous. My goal is to aim for quality over quantity, but in a free-form jazz kind of way. So there won't be any set schedule for these new episodes. Like I said, there will be a couple every week, 2, maybe 3 episodes a week. Some episodes may be all new topics. Some may revisit a topic from last year in greater detail. And it's entirely possible there will be a reprise episode every once in a while, so the grass doesn't get too long between cuts. All that being said, I was planning on bringing you a brand spanking new episode starting on this day, March 1st. But there just wasn't anything I really wanted to dive deep into. And that's how this is going to go. But there are a couple topics in the coming days that are pretty intriguing, so hold tight. I hope you'll keep listening, and I hope you enjoy the new direction. And before I launch into today's reprise episode, I want to thank all of you who have left 5-star ratings and reviews at iTunes. I love reading the comments and the updates of the comments and the personal notes, like on the Jonestown episode. That's intense. So thank you so much for those, and if you haven't left a rating on iTunes, please hop on over there and do that. And finally, a quick tip of the hat to Patrick for his ongoing and brilliant companion series, #OnThisDayInEmoji, which you can find over there at Twitter. You can follow him at GetPatrick, and you can follow me at OnThisDayPod. Today's episode is a hybrid of days, so one story from last year's leap year episode and another from the March 1st episode. I hope you enjoy it. Official complaints are filed against and arrest warrants issued for Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, and Tituba Indian for suspicion of witchcraft. On this day, when it's leap year day, February 29th, in 1692, some of the young women of Salem Village, Massachusetts, complain of being pinched and poked. They suffer fits and outbursts, and they're stalked by animals that they are certain are the specters of witches in the village. 17-year-old Elizabeth Hubbard is chased through the woods by a wolf that announces itself as the specter of Sarah Osborne, a bedridden elderly woman who lives on her dead husband's farm with her second and much younger husband, who used to be her indentured servant. 12-year-old Anne Putnam complains of being pinched by an apparition claiming to be Sarah Good, that also tries to get her to sign the Devil's Book. Sarah Good is an unfriendly homeless woman who keeps her distance from others in the community. 11-year-old Abigail Williams and 9-year-old Elizabeth Paris claim to also have been pinched and bitten by the apparition of Sarah Good, and the two of them also accuse a Caribbean slave named Tituba of using witchcraft to torment them. Tituba is owned by the Reverend Samuel Paris, Elizabeth's father, and Abigail's uncle. Prior to this, Tituba would entertain the girls by teaching them magic and voodoo-like sorceries of the parlor game variety. But for the past 2 months, Elizabeth and Abigail have suffered an inexplicable ailment that makes them crouch under chairs, contort themselves into puzzling postures, that causes their heads to throb, their bodies to flail, that envelops them with a feeling of fear and renders them mute for periods of time. Earlier in February, Sarah Good, the unfriendly homeless woman, stops by Reverend Parris's house to pick up some items for her young child. As she leaves, she mutters something under her breath. Reverend Parris can't quite hear what she says, but he notices that Abigail and Elizabeth's ailments worsen after Good leaves. Later in the month, a doctor diagnoses Abigail and Elizabeth as being, quote, under an evil hand. It's a small village, and word gets around about the girls' odd illnesses, and by late February, Ann Putnam and Elizabeth Hubbard also come down with the same mysterious ailment, and they begin suffering the aforementioned torments by the specters Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, and Tituba. On February 28th, the Sabbath, a torrential storm sweeps through Salem and surrounding areas, causing rivers to rise and floods to wash away not only bridges and cattle, but also any remaining doubt that it is the devil's hand guiding the witches in the midst of the Salem village community. On February 29th, 1692, Ann Putnam's father Thomas, his brother Edward, and 2 other men trek the 6 to 7 miles over waterlogged roads to Salem town to swear formal complaints against the witches. The magistrates in Salem town issue arrest warrants for Osborne, Good, and Tituba, ordering that they be brought to Nathaniel Ingersoll's tavern in the center of town by 10 a.m. the next day for questioning. And with this, the Salem Witch Trials have begun. On this day, March 1st, 1971, around 1:30 in the morning, a bomb goes off in a Capitol building bathroom in Washington, D.C. When the timed device explodes, it destroys the bathroom on the ground floor of the Senate side of the Capitol, and it also destroys a nearby barber shop, dining room, and blows out a dozen windows and doors. A Capitol building telephone operator receives a phone call half an hour before the explosion. The Capitol's chief of police later reads the caller's warning to a group of reporters.
This building will blow up in 30 minutes. Evacuate the building. This is in protest of the Nixon involvement in Laos.
The group claiming responsibility for the Capitol bombing on this day in 1971 is a radical leftist group formerly called the Students for a Democratic Society, and by the late 1960s, they're called the Weather Underground Organization, formed for the purpose of overthrowing the U.S. government. This is not the group's first bombing. In 1969, the Weather Underground blow up a police memorial statue in Chicago, not just once, but again after it's rebuilt, and a third time after it is rebuilt again. In 1970, they bombed the New York City Police Headquarters, they firebombed the home of a New York State Supreme Court justice, and they bombed themselves accidentally when a nail bomb they're constructing in a townhouse in Greenwich Village prematurely detonates, killing 3 members of the group and destroying the townhouse at 18 West 11th Street. And a year after the Capitol bombing, on this day in 1971, the Weather Underground will go on to bomb the Pentagon in much the same fashion, leaving a bomb in a bathroom, that time in honor of Ho Chi Minh's birthday. The group is led by Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn, and their group is named for the line in Bob Dylan's Subterranean Homesick Blues that goes, quote, "You don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows," which they use as the title for one of their early manifestos. Years later, after leaving the group, Ayers and Dorn put an end to the bombing campaigns and focus on campaigns for education reform and family justice. And Bill Ayers will end up in a controversy when it's alleged that he has close ties to the 2008 presidential candidate Barack Obama. The Capitol building will be bombed again in 1983, that time by a separate group called the Armed Resistance Unit. There are 305 days left in the year.